I wasn't initially going to go to the
I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee for Thursday, November 29th. My name is Jeremy Schrader, and I'm the chair of this committee. With me at the dais are Council President Bender, Council Member Reich, and Council Member Goodman. And we're also joined by Council Member Fletcher. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. We have 7 items on today's agenda, and we'll begin with the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 6. Number 2 is the passage of a revised ordinance related to the inclusionary zoning regulations. Item 3 is the approval of 6 council appointments to the Minneapolis Arts Commission. Number 4 is the approval of an application to rezone the property located at 208 Oliver Street South to adjust the common lot between 208 and 216 Oliver Avenue South. Number 5 is the approval of environmental assets worksheet for the development at 311 2nd Street Southeast, as well as the determination that an environmental impact statement is not required. I will be pulling number 5 for discussion. Number 6 is the approval of an application to rezone the property located at 5827 Nicollet Avenue to allow for the expansion of an existing surface parking lot. Are there any questions or comments from the committee members or of these items, or anyone like to pull anything off for discussion? Council President Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unless anyone else wants to pull it off, I would just like to briefly comment on item 2.
Great.
So this is our inclusionary zoning ordinance. We had a more detailed discussion yesterday at the HPD committee, which actually has the exact same council members on it as ZNP. So I just want to mention briefly that we had a discussion about defining student housing. And after talking with staff yesterday, staff is going to send around some draft language this afternoon to the council members that is based on federal definitions that Fannie Mae uses of student housing, and then folks can have a chance to review that and let me know if you have any concerns or any changes to make. We'll make sure that that's ready for committee of the whole next week so everyone has a chance to look at it before the final vote on Friday at the council meeting. So that's the plan for making sure we have the definition of student housing that we intend to have, which is certainly not market rate housing that's marketed to students. And then secondly, I just want to say thank you to everyone so much for the support and all the work that has gone into developing this ordinance over a number of years, including the staff on the zoning side. This is a really complicated ordinance, and we worked so hard to make sure that we were creating a policy that will get us very needed affordable housing, particularly in parts of town that are growing quickly and where rents are rising. Had we had this policy in place over the past few years, we would have gotten hundreds of units of affordable housing per year, equaling the amount that we get through our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So of course it's dependent on the strength of the market, but it is one tool that we can use to get affordable housing. And again, I said this yesterday, but this is really intended to be a long-term strategy. So when the markets are weaker, certainly we will get less units, and when they're stronger, we will get more units. The policy has been very carefully crafted not to impact the supply of housing in Minneapolis. We have a 2% rental vacancy rate, and we don't want to do anything to make it harder to build housing. In fact, our Minneapolis 2040 plan is making it significantly easier to build housing in the city of Minneapolis in every neighborhood. So again, just thank you so much, and thanks for indulging me in talking a little bit about this.
Well, I just also want to thank you for your work on this. This is such an exciting one. And one thing you mentioned yesterday that I do want to mention in our committee for the viewers that watch different committees, just that this is a long-term strategy and just one tool. It is an exciting one that, as you mentioned, would have created a lot of affordable housing if we've had it. So let's get that out there and start having that be the policy. I'll let the record reflect that we've also been joined by Councilmember Gordon. With that, I would like to move items 2 through 4 and number 6 on the consent agenda for approval. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. I'd like to right now talk to item 5. I want to see if I can recognize Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for letting me participate in this. So on this item that was on your consent agenda, we received feedback from the community and from city staff that there are a few things that, while they would be addressed in the development approval process later on in HPC and in other approval processes, we think it would be helpful to have these on the record as we make our decision-making process. And so what I'm asking for us to do today is to pass this on to the council without recommendation. I've asked city staff to work with the developer to provide a few areas, including making sure that the critical area plan is included in the zoning section of the document, and that we look at some of the historic context and visual impact and make sure that those things are described in the record so that we can make a complete decision by council on December 7th.
Great. Is there any discussion on Councilmember Fletcher's motion? All right. All those in favor of passing this without number 5 without recommendation, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and that motion carries. Well, thank you. We'll now move on to number 1, which is a public hearing regarding the application submitted by Doran CSM for interim use permit to allow for a temporary commercial surface parking lot on the property located at 311 South Street Southeast for a period lasting until December 7th, 2023. Before I begin, just because this also related to number 5, I'd like to get a little bit of guidance from City Attorney.
Sure. Chair Schrader, in the environmental rules, which are in state law, there is a prohibition on final decisions granting approvals, permits, or authorizations for a project until the associated environmental review process is concluded. And so in this instance, where there's a mandatory EAW for this property, that would occur at the earliest when a negative declaration on the need for an EIS is made, or if the council were to order an EIS when the EIS process was done and made, and then that EIS was determined to be adequate. And so in the interests of maintaining the integrity of both of these decisions, I would advise the council ultimately, this has been noticed as a public hearing, so you could choose to open the public hearing and take testimony today, but ultimately to continue this item to the next cycle of the council.
Well, thank you. With that, I believe we'll have the public hearing because this was noticed, but then we'll continue it until the next meeting in the new year. Seeing that, we will begin with a staff presentation on the application.
Good morning, committee members. Peter Crandall, Senior Planner with CPED Land Use. The application before you is located at 311 2nd Street Southeast. This is a interim use application for a temporary surface parking lot. The site is currently occupied by the former General Mills Riverside Technical Facility. Reflected here on the zoning map, as you can see, it's equivalent to about 2 city blocks in size. The facility is roughly located in the middle of that larger parcel, and then there is a large surface parking lot on the western portion of the site. Doran has purchased the property with the intention of developing it for mixed uses in the future, which is related to the EAW application that you just discussed. It's my understanding that they intend to maintain the existing surface parking and utilize it as a commercial lot accessible to the public for a period of up to 5 years while they work towards developing the remainder of the site for mixed uses. So that is the application before you, and I know the applicant is also here to speak to any specifics if you have questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we will now open the public hearing, and I'll give the applicant a chance to speak.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kelly Dorn with the Dorn Companies. This application is really in response to input that we had from the neighborhood about a concern about parking as other projects are being built in construction and parking's being lost. There's a number of event centers in the neighborhood, and the parking lot's already there. And so we just thought it made sense to use it on an interim basis until it's redeveloped, and that's in essence what this application does. We're absolutely okay with the delay in this, as I've indicated to staff, and we've already received the 60-day extension letter from Peter, and so that it's not a rush. And we're using part of the parking lot today as a construction staging area for the project across the street. General Mills has vacated the building and will be their lease expires in the spring. And then in addition, as part of the project that will eventually come through, we'll be reconnecting 4th Avenue Southeast from University down to 2nd Street. So that will also be part of the process as well, as amongst other things. And so we appreciate that. We'll be back in front of you in January, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. I'd like to see if anyone else would like to speak. If you can state your name and address for the record.
My name is Cordelia Pearson. I live at 512 7th Street Southeast. I'm here as an individual while I do serve as the Environment Chair for Marcy Homes Neighborhood Association. The Neighborhood Association welcomes development of this area, delighted that the developer is looking at interim parking. This route, University Avenue, is a major thoroughfare in the community, and it is lined with ash trees. And as you all know, those ash trees will need to come out. The landscaping and screening criteria that were described in the application, staff noted had not been met. We'd love to work with the developer to meet that 9 foot of landscaping with 3 foot high, look at native vegetation that provides water quality benefits, especially as we're using this gateway of University and taking out the ash trees. This is within the Mississippi Corridor critical area, and we'd be more than happy to work with the developer on their landscaping planning for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else here to speak? All right, with that, I'm going to continue the public hearing and keep it open until our next meeting. And so with that, we'll postpone this until our next meeting of the Zoning and Planning in January. Getting a little ahead of myself. I'm going to now move on to number 7 on the agenda. I'm assuming there's nothing further we need to do on that?
Mr. Chair, I think you should just take a vote on the continuance.
Of course.
And if the clerk could clarify, what is the date of that next meeting?
Mr. Chair, the first meeting is scheduled for January 10th, 2019.
Great. Well, I will move for a continuance until January 10th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and that will be continued. We'll now move on to number 7. Which is a discussion item regarding the zoning code text amendment work plan. And we'll begin with a staff presentation.
Good morning, committee members. We are bringing for your consideration CPED's zoning code text amendment work plan. As you know, our staff engages with all of you on ongoing regulatory updates for a wide variety of purposes. Including to respond to policy updates, respond to changes in state law, simplify, clarify provisions in ordinances, align with CPED's business plan, et cetera. The council has historically adopted anywhere from about 5 to a dozen text amendments in a year. Those range anywhere from changes to one paragraph in the ordinance to more comprehensive changes to entire chapters or chapters throughout the zoning code. We would like to continue to work with the committee on prioritization of items on the work plan. There are currently 10 pending items that will be 9 once inclusionary zoning is adopted and moved up to the top of the list, joining the 4 adopted items so far this year. Generally, our approach has been then that when a new item is added, it gets placed at the bottom of the list, unless through working with the committee, there's some reason that something should jump ahead due to that being something that's mandated by state law or something that has a particular urgency that should shift that higher onto the work plan. As noted at the end of the spreadsheet, implementation of the city's new comprehensive plan will proceed once that plan is in effect, following review and approval by the Met Council. So it's quite likely that we will have a much more detailed approach to what the regulatory implementation will be for the comprehensive plan next time we bring this to you. So this plan will likely look significantly different when we bring it to you. Our thought is that we will bring this to you for review and reprioritization roughly every 6 months or so. That's all I have for now. If I'll stand for any questions that you have about either the work plan generally or any specific items on the work plan.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Council President Linder?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just since the comprehensive plan is such a big topic of discussion this week, of course, as we get ready to take our final vote next week, could you just talk a little bit about how staff will engage with council members, particularly those who aren't on this committee, as you start to develop that work program for implementation, and like when council members could expect to have those conversations?
Sure. Chair Schrader, Council President Bender, we are, as you know, going to be forming a team that focuses on nothing but regulatory reform. So we're going to have a much more kind of robust presence and ability to communicate on these types of regulatory changes. In the initial months of 2019, we expect to lay out a much more detailed path than we have right now about how Minneapolis 2040 will be implemented and on what timeline and what types of things are most immediate, have most immediate urgency. We will certainly have a robust presence on our website, as well as reaching out to not only committee members, but all affected council members.
Great, thanks. Not seeing any other questions. I did want to thank staff for bringing this forward. I think the work on the comprehensive plan and the changes it's going to have, it's going to help to be organized. So I think this is a great idea. Not seeing any other questions, I'd like to move number 7. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. And seeing no further business before the committee, we are adjourned.